Welcome to another episode of the Real Estate Riches Roadmap. And today we have a very interesting topic for some of you fix and flippers. And it's going to be about how to pull permits, when to pull permits, and how it impacts the geography of where you're located on the permit process. And so we'll go through a lot of different examples of what we've done in the past, what we're doing currently, and the process itself. And so I'm going to turn it over to Ed and Sam. My name is Charlie Einsman. I guess I'm the deal finder of the group. I cause a lot of problems, but that's my claim to fame. And I'll turn it over to Ed. Ed's our attorney, but he's not your attorney. And this is Sam. Sam is the executioner of the business. He's also the one pulling the permits. He's also the one executing on the permits. He's also the one dealing with the contractors. So between myself and Ed and Sam is going to be your go-to guy for this podcast.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thanks.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Well, I think we should start, Ed, with what happens if you don't pull permits.
Yeah. Oh, that's where I come in.
Let's just start there, because a lot of people, and we lend money to a lot of people, they often get to the point where they say, well, do I need a permit? Do I not need a permit? What are the decision-making factors? And what if I do something large, like I finish a basement and I don't pull a permit?
Well, what I love about this, and I was going to say, not even just the people flipping now, but who want to get into flipping, is this is the part people don't think about when they're doing Charlie's part. Now, I'm not saying Charlie doesn't, but don't think about these detail things. They say, hey, there's a house, I'm going to fix it, I'm going to sell it, I know what I can do to, but there's more to it. You need to understand that the underlying girders of how our society has arranged house building. I often joke when we joke around about it. I mean, there are permits that you have to pull for things, because even if you're a contractor or you know what you're doing, you may do it wrong and the house may burn down.
Well, wait a minute. I'm a first-time fix and flipper, rehabber, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
I've never done it before.
Yeah.
What does permit mean? I know what the word permit means, but what is this? What is all this?
Fair enough.
What is even pulling a permit? What does that mean?
That's the legal side of things is basically, in order to do certain levels of work, some don't need it, but certain levels of work on repairing a house, you have to get permission.
From your
permit
wife.
From the government.
From your wife.
Well, that most importantly first, and then we're all still in that game.
Okay.
So
from the government.
So you've got to get that. You've got to get that permission. And so again, in the beginning, state, local. I'm going to kick him if he's doing this. So you gotta go to your local jurisdiction. And there's ways we'll talk about that with Sam to look that up. But there are forms to put in that basically say it's a lot of government stuff we don't like to do, who you are, who's doing the construction, whatever the case may be. And as Sam said, I'm going to finish a basement, or I'm going to add an extra bathroom, let's say.
Yeah.
And so those are the types of things in many jurisdictions. It depends on your jurisdiction. You have to get permission from the government. And we'll get into the bad side is, well, why do I really need that? I know what I'm doing. I'm just doing some electrical and basic plumbing. I'm all good. Or my contractor's brilliant and is really good at, they don't need all that stuff.
That's right.
It costs money and time. Sam will tell you about the money and time. But if you don't do that and you're in a jurisdiction that pays attention, and on this they do, because they don't want people buying houses that burn down, you can get stop work orders from the government and significant fines, thousands of dollars of fines that you have to, and if you've closed up something, like say you did plumbing and you've closed up the wall, you may have to rip the wall out.
And then when can that happen, Ed? Is that just while you're doing the house, or what can happen after you've sold the house?
Well, so it depends a lot on the jurisdiction. Like DC, for example, has a mandatory structural warranty that you have to have by law. So those things can come back and bite you much later if the permit process was not done.
Oh,
we have a bite.
That leads to a good question for Ed. So we renovate a 1910 row home in Washington, D.C., let's say. It's in Petworth, let's say. And we did a lot of electrical work. We own it let's say we owned it in 2020. We did a lot of electrical work. We sold it in 2020, but we did not pull permits. 2028 comes around. There's a big electrical fire in that house. Can we get sued for not pulling a permit?
Well, you can get
and how
sued.
long is the period?
you can get sued for anything. And there's and now that would be interesting in DC if that's within the structural time frame. Is it structural? Typically, and I'm no expert on this, the lawyer would look at, I mean, you're thinking statute of limitations,
Yes.
but when you sell the house, there's usually something called merger, where the person has had an opportunity to look at the house themselves. Hopefully that's in your sales contract, and you get your money and you're gone. You don't have further liability except
You would hope.
statutory. But Sam can tell you some stories about, and again,
Look,
it's what do you do when this problem arises? You're going to hire me and spend $50,000 fighting about it, or so? Why don't you tell your story?
I just tell a story we had. We had a house on Sugar Ray Leonard in Prince George's County.
George's County, Maryland.
So we bought that house, and it
Sugar
was
Ray
in distress, physical distress.
Ray Leonard.
Ray Leonard, yeah. It was in physical distress. They had separated the house into 2 units unlawfully, if you recall, and they had made it an accommodation for 2 rentals. That was not appropriate. So what we did was we reversed it back to its original configuration. But what we didn't realize was that prior to our ownership of that house, it had been stacked up with penalties that had been all removed from the walls and so forth. So we had no knowledge that it had been found in violation of having created these 2 units. So we go ahead. we
needed a renovation permit, right?
We needed a renovation permit,
Which we did not get.
but we did not get it because all we were doing was putting it to its original condition. We didn't modify the house in any way.
Change
in
walls
our
and
in our
supports.
understanding of it at that
Right,
time.
and we didn't add bedrooms
we
or
didn't
baths.
not the
or
one
a
thing.
deck or
Nothing. We just put it back.
Like I'm a homeowner fixing up
Yeah.
my drywall.
Yeah.
I
Well, we should have taken the next step and gotten the permit in that case.
Mm-hmm.
And this was one of my very first large learning lessons in this. Unfortunately, it worked out okay. So we go, the house is renovated, we sell the house, and the next owner gets it. They get a notice that this penalty that had preceded our ownership was coming now to them as the new owner, because we were only a short-time owner, and then they became the owner. They called me and they said, well, what did you do, and what are you going to do about it? So I went to the county and I explained to them what we had done. They said, well, that's fine, but now we're going to have to go and inspect the work that you did to correct the problems that were the prior owner's problems.
Right.
And we're continuously doing business in the county, so it's not something you can just hide from. Now, if you're changing LLCs and you think you're going to get one over on them, maybe. But we're doing business under one name and with the same contractor. So we went back to our contractor who was licensed, which was fortunate, and we got the permits, even though we weren't even the owners of the property, for the county to then come in and inspect. We opened up some walls and we showed them what we had done, and then they were okay with it. And then they lifted the penalties that were from the prior owner off of that. And just a tremendous amount of work. So this is important to understand up front, that you need permits, and that you also need to look at the history of the property to see if it has any penalties. In the District of Columbia, you can do that very easily. They have a system called Scout. You can look at what's been flagged as an issue. In Prince George's County, you have to do a Freedom of Information request, and that takes weeks for them to get back to you with that information. And so we learned that, and I did that subsequently. But that is just a small problem. You can have actual tremendous problems. Your tax record's not going to be updated. It won't reflect bathrooms. You'll get an appraiser in the house when they go to sell it. Perhaps it's a VA appraisal, and they're going to put a constraint on it that any unpermitted work won't count towards the value of the house. And then you'll have a totally finished basement that's worth $50,000 in the market. It's worth $0 on the appraisal. You won't make your appraisal. There's all kinds of considerations about how slow down your project will become, because when they come in, they tag your house and say you're working outside the scope of a permit or that you don't have a permit. It's not like you just go and get your car out of the impound. It's an entire process by which you have to start paying penalties, interacting with people who aren't particularly motivated to work with you because you've already shown bad faith by not following their process to begin with. So then you're dropped down in the queue of who's going to work with you. It's a lot of different things that can happen that are adverse.
Right.
So you got to figure out first, do I need a permit? And pretty much any changes outside of a couple plug sockets and paint, you're going to need a permit for. If you change a wall, if you change the wiring, if you change the plumbing, if you add a bath, if you're finishing space that's unfinished, you need a permit. In some counties like Prince George's, you need a permit for your roof. And actually, in many counties, you need a permit for your roof, because if you're changing more than a certain square footage of the underlayment, it requires a permit.
Wasn't it Prince George's we had to get a permit to just redo the kitchen? I don't even think we did.
Oh,
anything.
for sure. For sure.
So again, that's from the legal study. It's jurisdiction specific, but it always comes back to do the right thing. Try to do the right thing. And if you do get in trouble, then you're going to have a better chance climbing out of it. If you say to them, and if you're new to it, maybe they'll work with you. But they have constraints. There are things they have to do. And so why not just do the permit? I mean, we're only talking a few $100s, but
you're talking about a lot of complexity, though.
Right.
As soon as you go in, they're going to hand you a stack of papers to complete.
Right.
Now, let's say you're in Arlington County and you want to do a new kitchen, and you're like, oh, okay, I can do these papers. But they're not of any interest in talking to you because you own the property in an LLC, and you can't pull a permit as the owner of the LLC. You have to have a licensed contractor to pull the permit. Now, a lot of licensed contractors are capable of pulling permits, but not one of them wants to, who's going to be in a space in which you're not doing something retail. Okay, I come to your home, I'm going to put in a kitchen, and you're going to pay me a retail rate. I think I'm talking to the wrong person, but if I had the right person, then you would have to pay all the overhead associated with the contractor's time management of getting these permits. And that is a lot of time they don't make money, and a lot of technical details they're getting into. They may have to go out and hire a third-party permit processor who takes 3 weeks to get plans.
I love the name.
3 weeks.
Expediter.
The expediter. 3 weeks to get permits. And now you got a 6-week timeline. So there's a lot of factors coming into play about getting this permit in terms of the timing.
Oh, by the way, you've got a hard money loan that's accruing interest.
So you're looking at about 2 months. It's 2% of the loan amount into a hard money loan that you're already carrying. So on $1 million house, it's going to cost you $20,000 just to get the time to get the permits.
Yes.
Then it's going to cost you, it can't cost less than $10,000 to get your permits, no matter who's telling you it's 3 or this or that. It's always 10. You get the permits because you need some plans and you need some inspections. There's a lot of stuff that goes on into it, and it is complicated. And when you're going out and you're seeing a home to buy that you're going to sell for $450,000 and it's got a $100,000 reno, that reno number it never includes the permit number and the inspections dollars number, or the time that it takes to get that done. And that's the same thing every single one of our borrowers experiences. They don't factor that in. And then they are so like, oh, this took me, not everyone experiences this, but if they're not aware of it, they'll experience it. This took me an extra 2 months and it cost me an extra X dollars and I had to carry it. And now my profit on my margin went from 10%, which is what I was hoping to, and then I dropped to 7% and I haven't even started. And the market's changing the whole time.
Okay, so let's say, all right, so it's a county-specific government.
Sure.
D.C. obviously is a city.
Yes.
Louisiana is a parish. So let's say I'm in North Carolina, I'm in some county in North Carolina, and I want to pull a permit.
Right.
How do I find out how to do it?
Right. You need to go right to the county offices and need to ask them for who handles all the building permitting process.
Well, I like
building
Sam.
Zoning, planning, zoning. They might call it
permit office. So each county's going to have a different name.
And Sam's it calls it rolling up on somebody, which I'm the one in the wheelchair. But the way that you think, well, I can send an email, I can call, I can
just show up,
read whatever, and it's fine to do the reading maybe to understand it, to find it, but just going there and again presenting yourself as a nice person. Hey, I'm a little new to this process. I want to do it right. Here's what I'm going to do. And they usually have a person, like Fairfax County is great. Mm-hmm. They'll tell you, oh, you need this format.
Well, they have a building person of the day. They are a planner of the day or someone to talk to you.
They'll help.
They'll give you some amount of information.
Well, it depends on the jurisdiction, too.
Yeah, but they'll give you some amount of information. It's impossible for any one person who's like working at the counter to tell you how your whole process is going to work, because every process is unique.
Yeah.
Right. If I'm doing an addition, that's one thing. If I'm just doing something simple, like a modification of space and adding new outlets and upgrading the panel, that's something quite easy.
Well, a deck. There's often deck-specific permits.
You can get a general plan set that's used. If you have sort of a common space deck, you can just use general plans. You say, oh, it's going to be a deck that's 20 by 30 feet and it's going to fit these common plans. You could do that. But if you're going to do something more advanced and has multi-levels and it has a hot tub in it and it's energized, this is a whole nother thing. Then you're talking about a really long project timeline, pushing that out. And then taking the time to dig down into figuring it out, making an application, getting the feedback that it's wrong, paying the permit fee, getting the permit in hand, and then going through an entire inspection process, multi-stage inspection process, for which in some jurisdictions you pay a private inspector to come, and this becomes complex in and of itself. Just when he can come, how you're going to book it, how you schedule it, and how you pay for it. Like in the district, you use a third-party inspection, you have to use a common payment portal, they all have to tie together, the permits have to work, that everyone's interacting on these portals. It's a lot of software stuff.
Yeah, and
totally
so
unrelated to building.
And I'm a learner. I like to read. I like to learn. Ideally, you don't want to get thrown into it like Sam was saying on that other one. At least understand the basics. You can even go in that thing and say, I'm planning to buy a house and do such and so. Maybe you don't even have a deal yet, but understand the process. Talk to some flippers, go to meetups, talk to mentors who would have. How long should it take me in Prince George's County or DC or Culpeper or whatever because there's a real, it's almost more of an art than a science at a certain point as to how the process really goes. And then you can factor it into when Charlie's out there doing his deal, he's factoring in some of those costs and realizing, there's that underlying transactional cost, which is what basically a building permit is. But so don't try to skip it. It's just not worth it, the trouble you're going to deal with.
And the people that you hire to do it make a tremendous amount of difference that you hire throughout this process. If you hire a high-end architectural firm, they're going to walk you through every step of the process very methodically. It's going to take way longer than you have money to pay for. And then, so maybe you need to find what's the point at which you can get it done properly, legally, and the absolute minimum amount of paperwork and time to get through. And that's that spot you want to hit. Well, so you don't want to over-design it. You don't want an engineer and a mechanical and an electrical plan and all this stuff when all you need is a very basic plan, and that's all you need for the permit.
Yeah, but then how do you know when you're done?
You get a final, and then you're done, and then you save that. It goes to the county records too.
Now,
but a final is an inspection process.
But do I need a final for the electrical permit, a final for the plumbing permit?
Every permit you pull will need to be closed.
No matter what type of
No matter what type of permit.
So let's talk about
if you have a building permit, which is a primary.
Hold on, what are the types of the permits?
So if you're going to get started with any amount of work, like you're framing or doing anything, you need a building permit.
Building?
So the building permit is going to have a common number that's tied to the sub permits. The sub being the electrical, the mechanical, could be an AC permit, it could a plumbing permit, and it could be a plumbing as it relates to a sprinkler, a special sprinkler. Yeah, it could be another installation.
Maine has that, I think.
Yeah.
So you're calling all those sub permits.
They're all sub permits.
The main
every one of those
building, then it's got its subs, and each sub
has an inspection process.
And it needs to be closed out.
Sure, you've got like in a plumbing, you might have, if you're digging, you have an inspection after you've been digging, and then you have a rough-in inspection, and then you have a final inspection when all the fixtures are set. And then once that's closed, and all of the other permit, the electrical, mechanical, and all that, they can close out the building permit.
There you go.
And then it's all final. And then you can look online and see it. And then if you have a good real estate agent and you're buying a flipped house or you're buying a new house, they're going to look online and see that your permits were closed, because the very last thing you want to buy is a house where the guy started with the permits, didn't finish them, and left you with a bunch of open permits, because then you're paying for, if your appraiser doesn't catch it, you're paying for a house that you may not even be allowed to live in.
Right.
To reside in.
Get a certificate of occupancy for the house. And the thing is, this is what happens to some flippers is they see their margins going down.
Oh yeah, they're going
Maybe
the wrong way.
they even got the permit, or maybe they try to get away without, but they got it. And then they're like, oh boy, to get the plumbing closed, I know they're going to want me to do this, and this. I can't afford that. Maybe I'll just close this sucker up and sell it.
Yes.
And I'll just have to deal with it, because otherwise I'm going to go bankrupt or whatever the problem is.
And
Right,
but
and
that
hopefully-
doesn't work. That doesn't work.
Doesn't work.
Yeah.
No.
That's why DC added that thing to the structural, because they didn't want people trying to hide stuff, which can certainly, for home buyers out there, you got to be cautious about that.
Yeah.
But as a flipper, you're going to wreck your reputation. You may do something illegal. You're going to get fines. It's just not a good thing to do. So the question is to head off the timing and understand what you're getting yourself into. And okay, if I buy this property, I now know from at least reading online and going to I'm going to need a permit. I've talked to Tom, who's done some flips in my county. He tells me they usually run about this long, and I've factored that process in. It in and of itself is not rocket science, but what happens though when problems arise? Whether the permit was wrong from a prior person, you need something from the permit office that maybe is not exactly normal.
And then you don't want to be that guy.
No,
You don't want to be that
you're the guy who
You want
fixes
you
that.
want the right thing.
Well,
from the
not
start.
only that, but I don't know if you guys remember, you would think banks cannot be liable for this kind of thing. Well, there was a high volume flipper in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
who not only did they not pull permits, but they did such bad work.
And was unsupervised
truly
by
dangerous.
the lender.
And it was unsupervised by the lender.
By a nationally chartered lender.
Yes. And so all of the people who bought these properties, I guess, put it all together.
They're
that
like,
the same
hey, man,
folks-
this bank
Right.
is feeding all this flipper, and they're not even securing joists in the roof
Right.
and so forth like that.
That's right. And so they went and sued not only the seller of the house or the flipper, but they also sued the bank.
Because the bank had a practice of doing it.
That's
Not
right.
just because it did one time, because like one time.
One bad borrower, yeah.
And guess who
Can't be
had to pay? The
Yeah,
bank.
they're the ones
Because
with
they're the
the
only ones last standing.
Well, it's like they say, why do you climb the mountain? You sue the bank, they've got the money. But I remember this particular one. I remember looking, I'm like, what's wrong with this picture? And there was whatever the post was, and there was the joist that was supposed to go on top, and it was like
not
a foot across from each other,
Yeah, yeah.
holding up a roof. I was like, I'm no framing guy, lumber guy. It doesn't look like that's
Nah,
going
that
to
doesn't
work.
look right.
Yeah.
And in a hot market where people are buying, they may not.
That's right.
You don't want a home inspection, and,
right.
and I think we're heading out of that right
Thank
now,
goodness.
where you've got more time. But people cut corners because they figure I can make just that little bit extra money, and not good.
Yeah, not good at all. And the other difficulty you have as a owner of a house that has been worked on without any permits is you want to correct these problems. There's virtually no one interested in doing that work, right? No one wants to come behind someone who's done unpermitted bad work, because then if
They're responsible.
presumably they're going to get a permit, then they become responsible for it.
Right.
So if they're going to do electrical work in a house that was completely wired without permits, and then you want them to fix it per se, they have to go back through every circuit. They have to go back and test every last thing in order to own the responsibility for it. That's not efficient work. You don't want to pay for it. They don't want to do it.
Right.
And it's very hard to find someone. So if you're in the business steadily, and we're fortunate, we have a few great contractors that will come behind others when we come into a property that's been partly renovated, either comes back to us as REO or whatever. You buy it at auction or you find it as a tax lien, they'll come behind other people's work. That is few and far between. That is usually something you're going to have to pay twice as much for instead of even a retail rate. You're going to pay double retail for that thing.
Right.
That's a nightmare.
And another problem, I think, for flippers out there that we're fortunate because of that is you may even have a decent contractor that you've gotten.
Sure.
And so you say to yourself, I don't need to worry about that permit stuff.
Yeah.
They're going to take care of that.
Wrong.
They're going to pull it. They're going to get them all closed. They're going to, and maybe they've even been a good contractor for you before, but something happens. They make a mistake. They have financial problem. So, and even let's say they do all of it, there's timing. There's time. And so to push the process along, who's the person that's going to be most interested? It's going to be the flipper in this scenario. The contractor's like, well, I'm getting paid to fix the sink, whether I fix it this week or next week. Not thinking like, and then I got to get people in to approve the, sign off on the plumbing permit. Well, that delays, and then the electrical delays, and then there's a problem. And so you have to stay on top of this, even if you hire somebody, even if you hire an expediter, for God's sakes, who that's what they do for a living. But or if you have a good contractor or any contractor, follow along to make sure it's all getting done.
Yeah, even on the day of the inspection, right? The inspection's coming. You may have to be there as the owner. If you've been in charge of the permits, even if the contractor's name's on the permit, they're going to want to see you and the contractor on the day, and then the contractor needs to know they're coming and that they're ready and that the site is clean, and that the contractor is maintaining the site in a way that if the inspector stopped by on a different day, that he's not going to be like, oh, this is like unsafe working conditions.
Right.
They've opened a trench in the backyard. All kinds of things happen that you have to, be safety compliant with, and people aren't.
Well,
And it becomes a real problem. And even if we go as far as there are contractors in the district where we're dealing with a lot of older homes with lead paint, if they don't have a lead paint certification, and you probably don't, like, what is that? Who even needs that? You have to take all this coursework as a contractor to know how to handle lead paint. And so if they don't have the certification, then your contractor shouldn't be taking down a 100-year-old wall in that area, because you will become responsible. And I saw just in the paper, the guy got fined a couple $100,000. His contractor did the work. The contractor didn't have the safety stuff up for the lead paint. He's endangering the neighborhood. He's endangering the workers. He's probably a licensed contractor, but not everyone has to be licensed to deal with lead paint.
well, a licensed contractor make mistakes too, like anybody.
You're the owner, and you have to attest on all these permit applications, oh, I don't have lead paint. Well, how much have you thought about this? Have you talked to the contractor what his plan is? Has there been any basic planning around it, let alone the federal level of planning that's
Right.
supposed to go around paint removal, in these kind of situations? It's really pretty serious. It'll ruin your portfolio.
And your profits. Yeah, this is the thing we all would like to keep after that much work.
So last thoughts. In conclusion, I'll go you guys. I guess I'll be final. What is your bit of advice for those out there who are trying to pull permits? What's your advice?
Yeah, I think that it goes back to a lot of the discussions we've had in other podcasts, that you just have to do the right thing from the start and do things where there's not even an appearance that you might be not doing the right thing. If it's a gray area, for example, there is just no point in taking the risks of a gray area when you have the totality of the project to think about. Sure, maybe you could take it would take you 1 week less, or cost you $5,000 less, or be one less trip to the county, or whatever. If it's a gray area and you're not sure, just do with a more conservative approach in the permitting process. You don't want a shortcut in that space. You have to make your money on these projects when you buy the house. You have to make it by factoring in the cost of the permits and the cost of the time that's associated with it. If you haven't done that, then you didn't do the job up front right. There's no way you're going to make money and be able to execute efficiently and then make money. It's just not going to work. You got to get that buy price right to give you the runway to get the permits right.
Calculate it.
Yeah, and if you just factor that in when you're at it, when you're going at it.
Right.
And then double the amount of money that you plan to spend. The guy will tell you, every permit guy will tell you, I'll get you permits for $1,000.
Right.
No one will get you a permit for $1,000. It was $3,000 just for the electrical, because I had to do an outdoor power and an indoor one, and then we had to tie it to the building. Oh, it turned out to be $3,000. It was $1,000 per, but I got 5 permits now, so that's $5,000. Then I'm going to get them privately inspected. Each one of them is $1,000. So now I'm at $10,000.
Did somebody hurt you, Sam?
There you go.
Yeah, it's just one. It's no joke. Yeah, it's just like that.
It's fun. I joke because Sam is the guy who deals with dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's for us to avoid the problem. And some problems arise no matter what you do. But the point I want to pick up on is do the right thing. So learn what you're doing, pay attention, be involved, and then make the relationships with people so that when these inspectors come out, it's great if you're there. Some jurisdictions don't have a ton of different inspectors. Hopefully they know your contractor. I had one where a great contractor, I just forgot to do some little spray foam thing that you have to, it's relatively new. And the inspector came out and he's like, basically, I know you, just spray that and send me a picture and you're good. He didn't have to wait to get back on the schedule because we were all doing the right thing. It was a little mistake that could have cost us weeks to do. So that's the other thing, is make those connections. Avoid playing the games. I think you have it right.
Yeah, and for me, it's simple. Step one, know the jurisdiction you're working in. Step two, understand the processes to not only pull the permit, but to close the permit. And then also the final step is understand who's allowed to pull the permits.
That's it. Yeah, for sure.
And so as long as you can do all those things, then your project should go smoothly.
Right.
But you're going to have to spend a little bit extra money.
Well, what'll be great is at the end of the project, somebody will see how much money you've made and think, well, that was easy. All you did is you bought the place, you hired a contractor, the money
went to sleep.
fell, you went to sleep, and a big bag of money, and that was
Falls out of
great.
the sky.
Falls out of the sky. And you're thinking to yourself,
Kaplunk.
I remember the 3 hours I spent in the inspector's office trying to figure out which permit I needed to get changed and whatever. So you'll know. That's like, I'm an old lineman. When you score the touchdown, you know. Nobody else will know.
Yeah.
But you can get good at it. Or like Charlie knows somebody who knows it. I call Sam. He knows it better than I do. So.
Yep. And so that's our discussion on permits. If you want to hear anything else from us, please follow us. Please subscribe to our podcast. We try and put one out once a week. So thank you very much.